Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Blue Summer Part 2 by Everly Taylor, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Chief. I couldn't shake the foreboding feeling as we parted ways. I knew we needed to come into the city to take care of things, but I didn't like parting with her. Arias was unpredictable at best, and I didn't like taking any chances. It wasn't like I didn't trust Heath and Clay. I did, with my very life. Lily just brought out that extra bit of protectiveness in me, and I didn't like taking any risks with her. 4 of us were better than 1. They had been right, though. Splitting up and conquering our tasks would get us out of the city faster than if we all stuck together. Not to mention our informant was unlikely to talk to us with a human present or too many of us tagging along. Brian seemed to notice my mood, and he nudged my shoulder. "It's okay, boss. I think she makes us all like that." "Am I that transparent?" I asked. "I think as someone else who feels the same way you do, it's pretty easy to see," he stated simply. "Honestly, Brian, I'm not certain exactly what I feel. It's all so fast and also mixed up. I know I feel guilty for liking her, for wanting to be with her." "Why do you feel guilty?" he questioned as we strolled down the street, ignoring the stares from everyone. Already the smog weighed heavy in the air and made me wish we were back in the village away from all this. I thought about it for a moment. There were a ton of reasons, it seemed, each one weighing on me as much as the other. The big kicker was Marla, though. I feel like even being interested in her dishonors Marla and the commitment we had to one another. He nodded his understanding. "You loved each other, right?" he asked. "More than anything," I agreed. "If it were the other way around, would you want Marla to deny herself happiness over something that was in the past?" He looked at me, stopping before we entered our office building. Not the same," I denied. "Isn't it, though? If she had a chance at happiness, would you want her to take it?" When I stayed quiet for a moment to think over his question, he continued. "Look, it's not something you have to answer now or even tomorrow. But think of your life with and without Lily in it. Can you picture one of them? Being with Lily doesn't mean that you dishonor Marla. Instead, maybe it can mean that you choose to be happy like she would have wanted." He gave me a knowing look before opening the door to the building. I passed through, noting that we still had a door to fix, though grateful our reputations preceded us. "You are too damned observant, you know that?" "So I have been told," he smirked as we entered our main workroom. Efficient as always, he had the computers up and running with the tap of a few keystrokes. The setup here was nowhere near as advanced as the one in the village, but we only expected this to be temporary, so there was no need for going all out. "Confirm our meeting in 15 minutes. We can meet him at the taco truck as usual," I instructed Brian as I studied the other screen, frowning at what I found there. "What is this address?" I pointed to the screen. With a few clicks, Brian had it pulled up on the map and a frown on his face. "That's Lily's apartment." He clicked a few more keys and had the feed where Arias had been pictured entering her building, playing. "That's no coincidence. We need to get over there, now." I raced from the room, knowing that Brian would be right on my heels. Before we even made it out of the building, Heath and Clay came rushing in. Clay spotted us and tried to skid to a halt, his usual clumsiness having him sliding right into Brian and me. We untangled ourselves as I tried to understand what the 2 of them were saying. The fact that Lily was not with them said enough. "We have no clue where she went, Chief." Heath shook his head, running his hands through his hair. I could see how distraught he was and the anger in his eyes. "What happened?" I asked, trying to piece it together. "I don't know. I just don't know." Heath paced back and forth in the small space, before leaning his head on the wall. "I don't fucking know." He pulled his fist back and slammed it into the wall, bits of drywall flying from where his fists had made an impact. There was a knock on the door. Lily's landlord was looking to collect rent or to kick her out. I left her in her bedroom for just a second to see if Heath needed help with the guy at the door. Before I could get back to her, we heard a scream, and by the time we made it to her room, she was already gone. I fought the rage that welled up inside of me. That, coupled with the fear that we would all lose Lily before we ever really had a chance to show her the life she deserved. I remembered the fate of all of the other mates had suffered at the hand of Arias, and I pushed back my bubbling fury, knowing I needed a clear head to figure out what we needed to do next. Arias was spotted entering her building right after you guys did. There's no doubt who did this, Brian informed them. Did any of us really have any doubt who was responsible? Heath turned around, his eyes red and full of emotion. I feel so bad for leaving her alone, Clay shook his head. I shouldn't have left her, even for a moment. There is no sense in beating yourself up. If it hadn't been then, Arias would have figured out a way to get her alone. Hell, I'm sure he would have grabbed her in the bathroom if he had to. All we can do now is try to put our emotions aside and move forward, if we hope to save her. My voice was shaky, and I knew what I was asking him to do was much easier said than done, but we all had to try. We should probably head back upstairs and search for the cameras for any other sign of him. Try to get an idea of where he might have taken her, Brian suggested. I nodded my head in agreement and headed upstairs with the others. Something already told me that we would not find any signs of Arias after he entered Lily's apartment, though, but again, it was worth a try. We all gathered around the monitors as Brian searched for any other signs of Arias. As expected, there was nothing, and when I turned back around, it was to find Heath punching another wall. There was no point in telling him to calm down. I knew it would only make it worse. I had been in his shoes before, and I could sympathize with exactly what he was going through. We'll get her back, I told him, my words more hopeful than an actual declaration. How do we defeat him? Heath met my gaze, his eyes red and full of fury. I shook my head, knowing that he was not going to like the answer I had to give him. The truth was, I had no clue how much power he actually had, or if it was even possible for us to defeat him. I honestly don't know, but we will find a way. Where do we start? Brian inquired. I thought it over for a moment. Not taking action could mean Lily's death. At the same time, if we moved with too much haste, it could mean the same thing. Whatever we did, it needed to catch Arias off guard. At least, if we were able to succeed with that, we could have a chance of getting Lily out before it was too late.